Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. Apologize for the delay. We had some technical issues, but thank you very much. Appreciate you joining. Welcome to part 3 of the Secure Remote Access series. We're focused on industrial remote connectivity reimagined. Again, before we start, as always, we have the Q&A window that you can absolutely ask questions, and we'll be glad to get to those at the very end. So now I'm going to introduce Vishal Prakash again. He's our product manager for our IoT and remote connectivity platforms. And with that, I'll let Vishal take it away.
Thank you, Julianne. So again, welcome everyone. And yes, as Julianne said, apologies, we had some technical issues, so we've had to delay the webinar by about 30 minutes or so. So I'm glad all of you can make it. So once again, I hope that all of you, your family and friends are keeping safe and healthy given the current crisis. So let's get going. So this is the third and final part of this series of webinar, where really the first 2 sessions, we looked at the OT and IT considerations. And in this session, we will sort of review a quick summary of that, and then actually look at the solution for remote connectivity from ProSoft. So again, for those of you who didn't attend previously, just a very quick introduction on who ProSoft is. ProSoft has been in business for over 30 years, a global organization with offices in just about every single continent, either direct or through partners. And we have 2 key strengths. Believe it or not, we've got hundreds of products, but if I was to summarize that into 2 key strengths, the first one is really where we are the best choice when it comes to connecting disparate protocols on the factory floor. So we support over 40 different protocols, including a large number of legacy protocols, but also many of the new ones like OPC UA and MQTT and IEC 61850 and DNP3. And if you take those 40 protocols, we've got over 120 different combinations of those protocols, in terms of the gateways that we support or the in-chassis solutions for some of the PLC vendors and so forth. So our true strength is really in this protocol connectivity. The other strength of ProSoft is to transport this data, either wired or wirelessly, safely and securely. So we've got things like SIP safety rated Wi-Fi radios, industrial cellular gateways, which obviously is for remote connectivity and so forth. So the idea is that we can help translate your data, and we can, through connectivity, and we can transport that data where it's required securely and safely. So if you think about those 2 strengths that I just mentioned, ProSoft should really be your first step in sort of any connectivity or IIoT journey. Okay, so this next couple of slides is a quick summary of what we covered in the last 2 sessions for those of you that have missed it. I sort of put up this, we looked at the brief, we looked at all of these terms over the last couple of weeks in the previous sessions. The most important of this is OT readiness, which is a measure of reliability and availability, and more importantly, having an effective strategy to reduce the operational risks. We spoke about how remote connectivity is a very critical part of this strategy to maintain OT readiness. Because remember, OT readiness is directly linked to revenue. So as a result of that, the other thing that we looked at was also IT-OT convergence, because of this connectivity and networking between automation systems and traditional sort of IT systems. But, we then looked at the considerations, which I've put up here. But given how important remote connectivity is to maintain OT readiness, we spoke about how both IT and OT should be very involved in selecting the right remote access solution, because it does impact both. And given that given that both of these, that is IT and OT, have their own objectives and their own KPIs, you really need a solution that satisfies both their needs, fundamentally by looking at these considerations. So this brings us to the solution. And the solution, like imagine not having to worry about maintaining software or the service. Imagine not being able to control sort of the user and application access from one central location. So imagine connecting remotely with just a couple of clicks. So super simple to use. Imagine just simply opening a browser to click to the remote device that you want securely, where it's not already where it remembers, but it still creates that unique secure connection. Imagine creating an on-demand or an always-on type connectivity from one platform and from one device, where you don't have to deal with multiple devices. And imagine a solution that's really sort of platform and device and carrier agnostic. And if you imagine all of that, is why I said that our remote connectivity solution is reimagined. So the bedrock of ProSoft's remote connectivity solution is ProSoft Connect. When ProSoft Connect was envisioned as a product, the first thing we did was we listened to our customers. And we know that customers were looking for a solution that was modern yet maintenance-free and addressed some of the structural issues dogging the other solutions that are out there. Things like vulnerability to the Dragonfly attack, maintaining software, or lack of certifications and product certification. This is more hardware, but just as equally important. But we looked at all of these issues and we said, well, our solution, when we look at it, needs to address these issues at a foundational level so the solution can be future-proofed today and will continue to serve us well into the future, because we know, the one thing we all can be sure of is that change is constant and it impacts everything. So we wanted to have a building block that really addresses these problems, but at the same time, a building block that will allow us to continually be ahead and not simply play catch up. So when the solution, when we look at ProSoft Connect, we focused on two main things. We wanted to ensure that the user experience was intuitive and natural, so super simple, super easy to use. And that's something that is very, very important for OT. And we also wanted to make sure that the solution has multiple levels of security or defense in depth. That is very important to IT. We also wanted to make sure that the applications can support multiple use cases and multiple types of connectivity. And on, whether it's on demand, whether it's on always on, we wanted to make sure that it is one application that supports all of this, and you can use that same application to continue expanding our remote connectivity offerings. That obviously has to be customer driven. So to that effect, ProSoft Connect is a managed service. It is reliable, it's available, and it's highly scalable, and you're going to see why. And today, the single application supports two types of remote connectivity: the on-demand, which is secure remote access, or the always-on, which is persistent data network. And I'm going to talk about both of those in a bit more detail later on. So it is for this reason that I say that really this solution is reimagined, with the focus on it being OT friendly and IT secure. Now let's look at the components that you need. So, I gave you an overview, but let's look at these components a little bit more in detail. The first one is the hardware components, and we've got two types of gateways. So we've got a cellular gateway that's a 3G, 4G device. It auto falls back to 3G if it cannot get a 4G connection. It supports SMS, but a really cool thing is that the SMS is done through what's called as add-on instructions, either with Ethernet IP or with Modbus protocol. And the advantage here is that the SMS can be generated in the PLC, where you would do all of the checks and balances, check against the conditions, and generate the SMS, and then simply the gateway is used as a delivery mechanism. The gateway does support different types of remote connectivity. Obviously, it's best used with our solution, with ProSoft Connect. But let's say, for example, you've got an IT department that says, nope, we already use OpenVPN. We want to use that. Can your gateway support it? And the answer to that is yes. So we support OpenVPN, we support IPsec, and obviously connectivity through ProSoft Connect, which, if you go down that path, it really makes it super simple. With OpenVPN and IPsec, IT just needs to be involved, and there's a lot more of the background engineering that fundamentally ProSoft Connect takes care of. We've also got a wired gateway. This is a pretty cool device. So if you've already got internet access, you can use this gateway. It's got isolated ports, and an advantage of that, the WAN and the LAN being physically isolated from each other, is that you can use this fundamentally as a diode. And if you think about the electrical function of a diode is that it only allows current one way. So similarly, because the ports are physically isolated, what you can do is things like, for example, transferring files across segmented networks and maintain that isolation between the WAN network and the LAN network. Connect, the solution. So I've already mentioned a little bit about it, and I mentioned that how OT friendly it is and how secure it is. So let's look at some of the features as to why this particular solution is OT friendly and IT secure. If you think about OT, they've got so much on their heads. I said OT readiness, but they've got to keep everything ready and available. The equipment has to operate capability and reliability and all of that. So remote access is a tool, is a strategy to help them maintain that readiness, which means what they're looking for is something that is simple, that is industrial, and that's reliable. And we've answered that with the way the hardware is mounted, with DIN rail, the certifications on the hardware, how easy it is to expand. The solution itself, when you connect to it, is completely cloud native. So there's not another piece of software, for example, that they have to maintain or learn how to use. And because it is cloud native, the software is just super simple to use. I mean, it's a couple of clicks more than anything else. And there's lots of other advantages, support for industrial protocols, the right temperature rating, so it can be used in any environment, and things like, for example, allowing access to very specific IP addresses, which is really, in a way, firewalling. So OT side, the key factors, like I said, were ease of use, reliability, availability, and scalability. And I believe we've hit those checks. On the IT side, their key KPI is security. And remember that they're in charge for the entire organization. So they're responsible in terms of security for the entire organization. So what we wanted to ensure, and this is not to say that OT does not pay attention to security. They do, but it's different for them. So for example, they're looking at things like, okay, if I create a user, can I give this user different roles? And for them, that's important because they want to differentiate between an engineer and a technician and a contractor, for example. So, but they're not thinking about security at the enterprise level. For the entire enterprise, what's really important. And if you think about the entire enterprise, there's so many things, right? There's data theft, and there's network security, and there's device security. So this defense in depth approach, what it allows us to do is give this multi-layered approach where we can look at every fact from the physical device through to the connection, through to the transportation, and through to getting the data from point A to point B. And to that point on the IT side, we have things like an encrypted tunnel, so 256-bit AES encryption, where it's a secure tunnel. And to create that tunnel, it creates a credential, sort of a one-time use credential every single time it generates that secure tunnel. And again, just like in OT, IT would love the fact that there's no software to install or maintain. It greatly reduces the vulnerability because, like I said, once the vulnerability is addressed in the cloud, there's nothing for OT or IT to do. We've got independent pen testing. That's basically where an outside authority looks at the software and says, is it secure? It's not, or are there any vulnerabilities? Very important, the detailed audit trail. That allows not just OT, but also not just IT, but OT as well, to look at the history and look at to see what might have caused certain incident. And again, the idea there is not to blame anyone, but the idea is to use that information and ensure that that occurrence or that incident does not happen again. We've got two-factor authentication, which is token-based, single sign-on, which is really cool. Excuse me. What that allows to do is for IT to simply look at a single location where they can manage and maintain user access and application access. And the last feature I want to talk about is sort of, if you look at the bottom end of the screen under IT, you got virtual lockout, tagout. Very unique, cool. And what this is, it gives the power of the remote access to the end customer. So the idea here is, remote access, remember, is to maintain OT readiness. So the idea is whatever solution you're doing, it should help with that and not be a hindrance. So let's assume you're like a contractor or somebody like that who's got a weekly contract to connect and to do maintenance. And that's great. But the problem with that is every time you connect, because you're remote, you don't really have an idea what's happening in the factory. And that remote, even though you've got a contract to do maintenance, that action might actually make the problem that they're doing, could be a fire, they could be having some other issue, it could make it worse. So the idea with virtual lockout tagout is that you request permission before you can actually connect to the end device. So not the platform itself, you can still get into ProSoft Connect and you can look at the gateway, but if you want to connect to that end device at the end, whether it is the PLC or the HMI, you obtain permission, let's say from the IT manager or the plant manager or the shift supervisor. And that way they're fully aware of who's connecting, how long they're connecting for, so they can take actions of kicking them out if they needed to deal with an emergency or whatever it is. But it gives that control back to the customer, that when you're trying to connect, they know that when you're doing it and how long you're doing it for. And that's something that has been extremely well received by our customers and something that's used pretty extensively. So very quickly, remember I mentioned the two applications, which is secure remote access, which this is the on-demand connection. So, you connect for a very specific reason, like whether you want to check data or update a program, and you're connecting to a very specific part of the plant. This is not network access. It is very specific machine cell access. And the beauty about this is the defense and depth security that I spoke about, all those measures, they all apply to allowing you to ensure that this remote access is really very, very secure when they do it. Here are some success stories. And again, you're going to get a copy of this, so you should be able to go through it. But I really like the first one, kind of because the machine builder used our ProSoft Connect not just to reduce his traveling time, but also it's a pretty cool use where they use our very detailed audit log to kind of fundamentally convert it to a time card so they can bill their customers. So it gave them an additional revenue stream, which is nice. The other application that's supported on Connect today is the PDN, the Persistent Data Network. And if you look at this, this one is where it's always on. This is really for remote telemetry, remote communication. So think about geographically dispersed sites like at a water utility or a gas distribution system where they have to communicate to the master. And our solution is a cloud-based infrastructure network. It's a network as a service using the cloud. And the reason we went down that path is because of the ubiquitous nature of cellular coverage and increased internet access. This is completely platform agnostic. I mean, you could have like a global PDN network. I've got an example where I've got a test system in Australia, a test system in Dubai, and a test system on the East Coast, and they can all talk to each other, exchanging data. Super cool. You cannot do that with like a network-oriented connection because it only works on their network. And we've sort of taken that pain point away and say, no, we can be completely carrier agnostic. So let's say, for example, if you take the city of Denver, you could have, let's say, the north side of Denver that's very strong with Verizon, and the south side of Denver where AT&T is strong. And now the city of Denver's water municipality either has to maintain two different systems, or with PDN, they can have one network where they have both AT&T and Verizon all on the same network that they can all talk to each other. Is really, really cool. Another huge advantage is peer-to-peer. So for the slaves to talk to each other rather than just a master-slave network. And again, you have access to all of the security features and all of that. So I really see this as a future of remote networking, especially when you want to connect geographically dispersed sites. Some examples up here. Again, you can see a lot of them is the utility type applications, whether it's in water, whether it's in oil and gas. And the very last one, which is kind of cool, is on a train. They're basically using our PDN, this always on network, to communicate between the engine and the caboose, which is like the very last thing, for braking. These trains that carry crops, these are super long trains that go through very rugged terrain, through mountains and this. So RF did not work because you don't have line of sight. So they use PDN to ensure that these two carriages can talk to each other. So when the engine initiates a braking sequence, then the caboose gets it, and then it's acting correctly to ensure that the train brakes on time. Because the last thing you want is this massively loaded train that's got significant momentum and unable to stop. That's not a very good thing. So everything that I spoke about today, again, we're going to share this presentation with you. It's going to be available on our YouTube channel as well, ProSoft's YouTube channel. But if you go in there, here's some links for you to get some additional information, everything that I spoke about. Okay, so in summary, remote access is super critical to maintaining OT readiness. And in fact, it should be part of the strategy. And because of that, we know that both OT and IT should be equally vested in choosing the right remote access solution. Connect, which we spoke about today, is an OT-friendly, IT-secure, and it is a managed solution for remote connectivity. And then we also discussed or touched upon about how IT-OT convergence sort of is real and can deliver real and quantifiable benefits if done correctly. And that's fundamentally because of the increased connectivity and the networking is where this IT-OT convergence comes in. So before I open up for questions, just a reminder that I'm doing another series of 3 webinars. This begins on September 15th and every week for 3 weeks. But this series is going to look at how we can improve productivity using remote connectivity. Whether you're a machine builder, whether you're utility, the focus here is more on productivity. Look at various factors and how that helps the business. Because fundamentally what we should realize is that remote connectivity is not an expense. Rather, it is a solution to improve efficiency and productivity, no matter who you are. And that's what we're going to look at. Okay, so with that, I'm going to open up for questions.
Okay, looks like we have a few come in. Here's one from Newton. It says, for cellular options here in Brazil, we need a special certification like FCC called Anatel. Any plans for that?
Great question, Newton. Yes, we are looking at it. It's on our roadmap. So currently, our current gateway, the I-635, does not have, it's one of the few countries where it does not have the local in-country certification. And I think the other one is Japan, but that is absolutely on our roadmap. In fact, we were really close to getting the certification, but Brazil changed its requirements in terms of what it needed. So that set us back, but we are now working on that. We're looking at it. So hopefully we can get this to you sooner or later. But today, what you can use in Brazil is our wired gateway, the PLX35, but we'll certainly be looking at it for the cellular product for sure.
Very good. He has another one. Does the solution have an IEC 62443 certification?
Not certification, but we are compliant. So we use those principles to look. The certification actually takes a lot of time. And again, that's something that we are constantly, or we've started the process. But when the solution was designed, when we're working on it, we're already aligned to those principles as of now.
All right. Also, he asks for PDN, each location should have different IP address in the same subnet.
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
So it's a layer 2 network. It's a flat structure, which means you can have, yes, every device on the network must have a unique IP as long as they're on the same subnet.
Okay, and then Todd asks, will this only connect to one subnet, or is there a gateway address that can be entered to be able to cross subnets?
Gateway address. I don't know the answer to that. I'll need to get back to you on that, Todd. Um, right now, in terms of IP configuration, you can only enter one set, so one sort of subnet. But I think what you're talking about is things like VLAN. If you are talking about a VLAN, then the current gateway does not support a VLAN configuration. But let me check exactly what you asked for, and then we can get back to you.
Very good. We have another question. It says, so the devices of VPN need to be connected to the project and will transfer data between other VPN device through the cloud. Maybe that's
correct. Yeah, we simply
Okay.
use the cloud as the transport mechanism. So we create the tunnel, which we use a cloud service because they're geographically spread, to send the data across through to different sites. Yes.
Okay. All right. So we'll get back with Todd on that one question about the subnets. See
Yes,
if there's
please.
any more questions here. I think that might be it.
Excellent. Thank you again for your time. We really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you all on the next series of webinar. Julianne, over to you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Vishal.
Thank you.